Hello everyone. This is the fourth part of the story, Blade God of Blood. Chapter 7 Negotiations. Blade, I'm sorry, they gave too much. Bert's words made Blade's heart sink. He was about to say something when Bert laughed. Just kidding, Blade, come to my manor as a guest, I have a surprise for you. Blade was speechless. He was silent for a while, and asked, Are you a human now, or a vampire? Bert said, Human, a person who is regarded as a king by the vampire and maybe the richest person in the world at the same time. I am going now. Blade put down his phone and said coldly to the police, Take me there. It is good. The police nodded in favor, and then he drove the police car to the front of a large manor in the suburbs. The police glanced enviously at the manor worth hundreds of millions and said to Blade, Mr. Blade, I can't go in, I can only send you here. Blade ignored him, opened the door, and stepped out of the police car. An acquaintance with an umbrella was waiting for him at the door, but it was James. Blade, the blood god is waiting for you. Speaking of which, can't you come back at night? It's so uncomfortable during the day. James said with a smile. It could be seen that he was quite complacent during this time, and the smile on his face never stopped. Blade's eyes looked James up and down through the sunglasses and said, The clothes are good. More than good. This is a top-level suit that I spent more than $100,000 to find someone to make, and it also has high-tech UV protection on it. James boasted that he had never expected to have this kind of clothes before. Blade was a little speechless. More than $100,000? This is nothing. After the speaker and the 12 pureblood elders died, most of their property belonged to the blood god, except for some that were robbed by S.H.I.E.L.D. James motioned for Blade to get on the patrol car, and then drove in while saying, The first day the blood god stayed here, he bought a dozen luxury cars, and even called a group of car models to have a party. Hey Blade, I heard that the blood god can freely control any part of the body, any part. Blade secretly sighed. No wonder he said that they gave him too much. The wealth of pure blood in North America probably fell into his hands. Now he is afraid that he has more money than Tony Stark. The patrol car drove for more than 10 minutes before it arrived at the gate of the villa. To Blade's surprise, Bert was waiting there. He stepped forward and hugged Blade and said with a smile, Blade, long time no see. It's not too long, I haven't figured out a way to kill you. Blade said coldly. The housekeeper and maid next to him were very shocked when they heard the words, He dared to speak to the blood god like this. Isn't he afraid of death? Think slowly, don't worry, go, let's go in and talk. Bert laughed and said, James, we still have a wave of guests, please work hard and meet them outside. Got it, blood god. James respectfully agreed, but he was a little surprised in his heart about who was coming. He was the confidant of the blood god, and those who need him to welcome are not ordinary people. Bert walked into the villa with Blade and said, I'll give you a surprise first, let's talk about the rest. Wouldn't it be a group of vampires ambushing around? Blade asked, and Bert laughed dumbly. He said, To deal with you, I alone am enough, there is no need to ambush. Don't talk about this, watch the surprise first, you will be very happy. With that said, Bert pushed open the front door, and inside there was an old man who was drinking red wine, and a lot of wine spilled out and fell on his clothes. When normal people see this scene, they will guess that this is cheap red wine. In fact, the red wine the old man drinks is worth tens of thousands of dollars. Whistler! Seeing the old man, Blade exclaimed. Whistler turned his head and laughed at Blade. Blade, you are finally here, I knew they would come for you. Blade's expression is a bit complicated. Since Whistler is alive, he should have become a vampire, right? Don't worry, he's still human. Bert patted the shoulder of Blade and said, When you went to deal with Deacon, he was taken away by a group of vampires, and the group of vampires froze him and tortured him day and night. Later, I rescued him and gave him medicine. Back to human. This is the plot of the second part of Blade's movie. Whistler has indeed changed back to a human being. Therefore, It is assumed here that after a person is bitten, as long as he has not turned into a vampire, he can be rescued with medicine. That's right, I'm human now. After this guy rescued me back, he served delicious food and drink every day, and invited a few models to accompany me. Whistler laughed, but the next moment he smashed the precious red wine on the ground and smashed it, and then shouted. He thought that he could bribe me. He was wrong, Blade, don't mind me, kill all these vampires. Blade was a little speechless, but he was happier that he was still the familiar Whistler, the same bastard as always. Whistler, this is a bit of a waste. Bert was a little dissatisfied. He said, By the way, one of those models is pregnant. What? Whistler, who was still arrogant just now, was stunned, and Bert laughed. He said, Just kidding, come here, clean up this place, there will be guests in a while. Immediately, maids came to clean up. These maids were all carefully selected human beings who especially served vampires. Vampires can do whatever they want, including blood-sucking. Blade couldn't help but ask, Bert, what exactly do you want to do? You will know in a while, Blade, we are friends, I will not harm you. As long as you want, you can leave with Whistler at any time, and I will never stop it. Bert said seriously. However, I hope you can stay for a while. Today, we have to decide the fate of the North American vampire race. Blade glanced at Bert, nodded and said, Okay. You won't be disappointed. Sit down. Bert smiled, and Whistler sneered. I'll see what the hell you gonna do, by the way, give me a few more bottles of that previous red wine. No problem, but don't smash it anymore, I don't like waste. Bert clapped his hands and asked someone to bring over a few bottles of wine. Having money and being wasted are two different things. Having money doesn't mean it should be wasted. Whistler, drink less. Blade sat down. He looked at the precious furniture around him. At first glance, there were cashmere carpets that were not ordinary goods, and genuine works were hanging there. He sighed. Pure blood is too extravagant. It's too extravagant. Bert nodded in agreement. As long as a phone call, a Michelin chef will come to cook for us immediately, and all the materials will be shipped by air. By the way, the housekeeper gave me a list before, which records many stars, as well as people who are slaves of noble blood and so on. As long as I need them, they will come right away and let me taste their blood. It's disgusting! Whistler yelled, and Blade shook his head. A half-blood vampire couldn't even drink a blood bag, but a pure-blood could pick and drink blood at will. No wonder the half-blood would be incited by Deacon. Also, the behavior of the vampires raising slaves is disgusting. It's disgusting, so I don't want any of them. I'd rather communicate with them in other ways. Bert laughed. He said, Speaking of which, a lot of money is also troublesome. My team has not been able to calculate how much money I have. And this time it is estimated that I have to pay a lot of taxes. The tax bureau is not good. Are you showing off? Blade complained, and at this time, the butler came in and reported. Blood God, Senator Stern and Director of S.H.I.E.L.D. have come. Note: Stern is a former U.S. Senator from Pennsylvania and a covert member of Hydra. Using his position, Stern tried to convince the American people that Tony Stark was actually a threat to their safety, and he should hand over his Iron Man armor. In the second part of Iron Man movie. Yup, that guy in the court scene who got roasted by Tony Stark. Okay, I'll come out now. Bert nodded and said to Blade. Blade, we will have a meeting together in a while. Whistler, you should avoid the meeting. Your mouth is too stinky and it is easy to offend people. Whistler gave Bert a middle finger, got up, and limped away with a bottle of wine. When passing by Blade, he whispered, Blade, don't believe a word that's coming out of that vampire's mouth. Blade nodded coldly. Although Bert heard it, he didn't care. He got up and went to the door to greet the senator and Nick Fury. The one-eyed Nick Fury had a blank face all the time. He felt that he was too unlucky. He spent more than 10 years carefully arranging a blood god plan. Once successful, the vampire clan will no longer be a threat. The result of 1,000 calculations, but a guy jumped out in the middle to cut off the blood god, and even Deacon was killed by that guy, which not only caused his plan to go bankrupt but also made all his arrangements and backups go to waste. Turned into a joke. What's even more depressing is that Director Fury didn't find out about this until some time ago, so he couldn't change his plan immediately, and his original plan helped the guy instead because of the pressure of S.H.I.E.L.D. The vampire clan surrendered to him so quickly. If they don't surrender, the blood race will be killed by the blood god, Blade, and S.H.I.E.L.D. After the vampire clan surrendered, the blood god stabilized the chaos of the vampire clan at the fastest speed, and then led the vampire clan to raid the stronghold of S.H.I.E.L.D., and swept away the 8th level agent John Garrett and a large group of elite agents. That's why Nick Fury accepted the invitation today and came in person. Negotiation. Of course, Nick Fury will not be in danger, and Senator Stern has also been invited over. Unless vampires want to go to war with humans, they dare not do anything in such a formal setting. In addition to this incident, Nick Fury has another trouble, that is, Captain America's girlfriend, Peggy Carter, the founder of S.H.I.E.L.D., went missing a few days ago. He used a lot of manpower to find it, but there was no clue at all. Compared with Director Fury, Senator Stern is in a good mood. Vampires are very generous. Although he is not short of money, who would think that money is too little? Director Fury, Senator Stern, welcome! Bert walked out of the villa, stretched out his hand to the two of them, and said, I am the new patriarch of the vampire clan, you can call me Bert. Senator Stern held Wong Bert's hand and sighed. Patriarch Bert is young and promising. The vampire clan has always only had the speaker, where was the patriarch? Director Fury stared at Wong Bert and said in a cold voice that he has recently investigated a lot of Bert's information. To be honest, he still can't understand why such an ordinary boy can defeat Deacon and become a blood god. 22 years old, before this kid became a vampire, there was nothing special about him. After he became a vampire, he went all the way. Now he has become the head of the vampire clan, and he even has to negotiate with him. They didn't have it before, but now they have it. Speaking of which, it's thanks to you, Director Fury. Otherwise, if the 12 elders and the speaker are still there, no one will be able to unify the vampire clan. Wong Bert smiled and said, By the way, do you want me to write a thank you letter to S.H.I.E.L.D.? Director Fury's face was even darker. Everything he did became a stepping stone for this kid. It can be said that without him, this kid's road would never be so smooth. Stern said in a roundabout way. Okay, let's go in and talk in detail. Patriarch Bert won't let us drink wind here, right? Of course not, you two please. Bert invited the two of them into the conference room. They were stunned when they saw Blade. Bert introduced. This is the famous vampire hunter Blade, the vampire clan's #1 enemy. Blade, this is Director Fury. Deacon was his undercover agent, Senator Stern. Blade said with a bad face. Director Fury? I appreciate your care. Director Fury snorted coldly. I don't know Deacon, but why are you a vampire hunter in the vampire's lair? Blade was too lazy to talk to Fury, and Bert asked the two to sit down, let the maid beside him pour the red wine that had been brought up, and introduced. This is the red wine I got from an elder's house, and I heard that Napoleon owned it. I don't quite understand this. The two of you are free to drink. Stern smiled and said, It's from the Napoleonic period, you have to taste it. Director Fury didn't mean to taste it. He said, Patriarch Bert, I want you to explain why you attacked our S.H.I.E.L.D. station and captured our people. Bert sneered. Everyone said that, Director Fury, but you are more black-hearted than I thought, and it was your people who attacked our vampire clan, but you are saying otherwise? Director Fury said blankly, You are suspected of racial discrimination. No, I'm just despising you. Bert waved his hand, motioned the maid to leave, and then said, Okay, let's not talk more nonsense, Director Fury, Senator Stern. I just want to ask, is the agreement between the vampires and humans still valid? Before Director Fury could answer, Senator Stern put down his glass and said with great certainty, It works. I'm here to mediate between the two of you and bring everything back to normal. Recently, the law and order in New York have been a lot worse. Washington doesn't want to go on like this. Director Fury's face darkened again. What is a pig teammate? This is called pig teammates. The vampire clan is not strong, but it has not been eliminated. In addition to not knowing whether there are nuclear bombs and strong capital, the most important thing is that there is a group of human slaves, familiars, in the government to escort them. Those in power want to live forever and live decently, so the vampire race can't fall. Since the agreement is still valid, why did S.H.I.E.L.D. send Deacon to trouble our vampire clan? Also, why did S.H.I.E.L.D. attack the gathering place of our vampire clan, kill our people, and rob our wealth? Bert questioned Director Fury. Director Fury, you must give me an explanation today. I said I don't know any Deacon. Director Fury said. As for attacking the gathering place of your vampire clan, it is because your vampire clan violated the agreement to arrest living people to suck blood, and we have the right to do so. That was instigated by your undercover Deacon. S.H.I.E.L.D. must release our people immediately and compensate us for our losses. I'll say it for the last time, I don't know any Deacon, it's your blood family who should compensate, and let our agents out immediately. The two sides naturally quarreled. Senator Stern hurried to smooth the game, while Blade drank silently beside him. It was so boring, and both sides were acting. In fact, this is not called drama, this is called going through the motions. Although it is boring, it is necessary. The quarrel was almost over. Bert waved his hand and said, Director Fury, I will give the senator some face, and I will return all the agents to you, but correspondingly, you must also give back the blood and the wealth you have stolen. Give it back to us, and then we will formally cease the war and continue to maintain the previous contract. Can? Director Fury agreed with a cold face. With the current situation, it can only be like this. No matter how strong S.H.I.E.L.D. is, it is impossible to violate the decision of Washington. S.H.I.E.L.D. this time, it can be said that the bamboo basket is a complete draw. Of course, Director Fury didn't plan to make rich vampires richer. How much he had to pay back depended on his mood. It just happened that he was short of money to build a base recently. He likes to build bases all over the world the most, even if it is with corrupt money, he must build them. Bert nodded with satisfaction. He said, Very good, Senator, Commissioner Fury, I have a suggestion. What is it? This time, S.H.I.E.L.D. has the main responsibility for the conflict between the S.H.I.E.L.D. and the vampire clan, but our clan is also responsible. Many vampires do not abide by the agreement and wantonly suck the blood of living people. Bert glanced at Director Fury and said, Deacon Frost, who is supported by S.H.I.E.L.D., is the most typical representative. Director Fury said, I don't want to explain, Bert Wong, what do you mean by saying this? Bert smiled and said, What I want to do is very simple, to prevent this kind of thing from happening again. Looks like I'm going to write you a thank you note. Director Fury exaggeratedly said that he didn't believe what Bert said at all. In fact, Senator Stern didn't believe it either. Bert ignored Chief Fury, and he continued. For this reason, I decided to set up a vampire police station, which is specially responsible for investigating and dealing with those criminal vampires. The rules are similar to human laws. Bert glanced at Director Fury and said, S.H.I.E.L.D. can send someone to join the vampire police station, and the ratio of the two sides is about 1-9. Are you serious? Chief Fury was a little shocked. It was nothing to set up a vampire clan police station, but willing to let S.H.I.E.L.D. in it. Blade also looked at Bert in shock. Could this be the reason he called me? Chapter 8 Peggy Carter. Really, but if you want to join, you must agree to a few requests from me. Bert said. First, protect the interests of vampires. If a law-abiding vampire is killed, you must arrest the murderer, and you must help destroy the organizations that study vampires. Second, the price of blood bags must be lowered. The original ones were too expensive, and many mixed-race vampires had to take the road of crime because they had no money to buy blood bags. There is no way to do this. There is only so much blood. To supply your vampires, our blood bank is a little short of blood. Senator Stern said that selling blood to vampires is big revenue for the government, and it is also a very useful dark revenue that does not require review by the two houses, and he does not want to lower it at all. Bert smiled and said, "There is always a way, it must be lowered." Director Fury pondered for a while and said to Bert, "I can consider the conditions you said, but the ratio of the two sides is too low. I think it is more appropriate to split between 5 and 5. 5 to 5 is impossible." Seeing Chief Fury Lion's big opening, Bert shook his head and said, "Director Fury, I just set the tone. If you have any ideas, you can talk to my president in detail." Director Fury asked, "President?" "Yes, I plan to set up a blood god group, and the president hired with a high salary will handle various matters. She is now learning how many assets I have, and you can see her in a while." Bert smiled and said, "Director Fury, my president will surprise you." Director Fury smiled without saying a word. "Surprise me? Who do you think I am? I am the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. What have I not seen?" Bert continued, "In addition, the chief of the Vampire Clan Police Station, I would like to invite the vampire hunter Blade." "Me?" Blade was a little startled. Bert nodded and said, "Yes, it's up to you. It's no different from your original job. It's all about killing vampires. The difference is that before everything is killed, now only those who break the law are killed." "Vampires aren't all bad, I'm sure you agree," Blade said coolly. "I didn't kill all of them. At least I didn't kill you." "That's true." Bert laughed, and Director Fury couldn't help but glance at Blade. "You wanted to kill him at the time, so why didn't you do it?" Blade said to Bert. "After the establishment of the Vampire Clan Police Station, a lot of vampires will die. Countless vampires suck the blood of living people. Let's forget about what happened in the past. Don't worry about the future killings, no matter how many are killed." Bert said cruelly. He didn't mind swallowing a little more blood at all. Thinking of something, Bert took out a badge from his arms and threw it to Blade, saying, "Blade, this is for you." "Which clan's badge is this? A red-colored dragon? I haven't seen it before." Blade glanced at the red dragon on the badge, and asked inexplicably. Bert smiled. "This is my badge, the first piece in your hand. It has my power on it. Seeing the badge is like seeing me. You can kill any vampire except me and report back. Of course, a rigorous investigation is required afterward." Everyone looked at Bert in shock when they heard the words. He trusted Blade so much and gave him such great power. Director Fury squinted slightly. The blood god's behavior is completely different from those rotten vampire elders, young, vigorous, and resolute. Blade felt that the badge was a little heavy, and he asked, "You trust me so much?" "Because you and I are the same." Bert smiled and said, "In addition to the Vampire Police Station, I will also pay people to study the artificial blood that vampires can drink. Once successful, vampires can integrate into human society, and there is no need to hide like now." This sentence made the three of them stunned. Immediately, the three of them shook their heads secretly. This idea is completely unrealistic. Vampires can't integrate into human society. The life forms of the two are too different. There are a lot of problems with ethnic integration of different skin colors, let alone interracial integration. This new patriarch is a bit naive, but the law-abiding vampires meet the requirements of human beings very well. Senator Stern and Director Fury exchanged glances and nodded secretly. Dream still has to be, what if it comes true? Bert saw the thoughts of the three and said with a smile, "Blade, what do you think? I think being the director can do more than you can do alone." "Let me consider it," Blade said. From the action of holding the badge, he can know that he is very moved. "Think slowly, I'm not in a hurry." Bert laughed. Chief Fury said, "The general framework is settled. I will send someone to discuss with you about the prisoner exchange and the Vampire Clan Police Station. Patriarch Bert, I hope what you just said is the truth." At least it's more real than you, Bert said. Stern nodded with satisfaction. Under his mediation, everything went smoothly and harmoniously. At this moment, the side door of the conference room opened, and a young and beautiful British beauty with a mature and graceful temperament walked in, followed by the pure-blooded vampire Mercury, holding a pile of documents with an unhappy face. Seeing this British beauty, Director Fury was stunned for a moment, then stood up abruptly and shouted in disbelief, "Ms. Carter!" Although the other party has become younger, Fury would not make any mistakes. The reason is very simple. He grew up watching Ms. Carter's and the U.S. team's documentaries. Stern was also shocked, but he was not surprised why Ms. Carter was here, but about how the other party had become so young. Being a vampire also has this benefit. Why haven't I heard of it before? If these two things got out, it's sure to be a sensation, whether it's Ms. Carter becoming a vampire or Ms. Carter getting younger. Peggy Carter greeted Director Fury with a smile. "Director Fury, we meet again." Fury slapped the table hard, glared at Bert with one eye, and said, "Vampire, you are so bold, you dare to turn Ms. Carter into a vampire. You want to die?" Bert sneered. "Are you threatening me?" Carter waved his hand and said, "I was not forced. He talked with me for 3 hours and successfully persuaded me that I would become the president of the Blood God group and lead the vampire race and human beings to merge, and the reward he gave me was eternal life and youth." Director Fury believed that any other woman would agree to this condition, but a strong woman like Ms. Carter would definitely not. He took a deep breath and said, "I want to talk to you alone." Bert waved his hand. Carter nodded and took Director Fury to the side to talk alone. As soon as the two left, Stern couldn't wait to ask, "Patriarch Bert, your vampire clan can restore youth? This is a very expensive special treasure. It's not that easy to get Ms. Carter young." Bert smiled and said, "In fact, there are no treasures. His blood has the function of restoring youth." "That's right, Ms. Carter is his descendant." "Is the price extremely high?" "I believe most women are willing to pay the price." Senator Stern stood up and said, "Patriarch Bert, I have to go back and report to the Vice President about the truce and the Vampire Clan Police Department." "Sure, Senator Stern." Bert stood up to send Stern away. On the way, he said, "Senator, what kind of yacht do you like? I'm planning to hold a swimsuit party recently, and I need a yacht. By the way, Senator, if you are interested, you are more than welcome to join." "That's not a problem. I'll go back and look through the magazines to see which one fits." Stern laughed. He knew that the other party wanted to send him a yacht. "Then we agreed." Bert smiled and shook hands with Stern, and then watched him leave. "If I remember correctly, this old guy seems to be a Hydra, right? What if I say 'Long live Hydra' in his ear?" Bert shook his head and turned back to the living room, only to see Mercury and Blade staring at each other, looking like they were ready to draw swords. Bert smiled and said, "You will be colleagues in the future, so you must live in harmony." Mercury turned her head and said dissatisfiedly, "Why did you ask Ms. Carter to be the president? Don't you know she is the founder of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Blade couldn't help but glance at Bert, and he asked the founder of S.H.I.E.L.D. to be the president. Was his head kicked by a donkey? "I know, but she is also a vampire now and will safeguard the interests of the vampire race." Bert poured himself a glass of red wine and said, "Besides, I need someone who does not belong to your pure blood to help me control the clan. Ms. Carter's ability is just right." Mercury said, "We have already handed over all our assets to you. Why don't you trust us yet?" "Trust needs to be built slowly. Talking about trust now will only hurt feelings." Bert sneered. If he didn't bring Carter, he would become a puppet of the vampire clan in minutes. He continued, "In addition, the vampire clan needs to change, otherwise it will be finished sooner or later. Let outsiders be the president, and we can make better changes. The vampire race does need change, but not your kind of change." Mercury shouted, "After the establishment of the Vampire Clan Police Station, many vampires will die, and a large number of vampires will escape. At that time, the strength of our clan will be greatly weakened." Bert said. It won't be weakened. The vampires who break the law will be swallowed by me, that is to say, their strength will be transformed into my strength, so that the strength of the clan will not only not decrease, but will also increase. Enough to ensure the clan's strength, safety, and profit. Mercury and Blade were stunned. You want to swallow those vampires who break the law? Bert nodded. Can't I? We can give a nice name to it, like Return to the Embrace of the Blood God. What do you think? No way. Blade asked suspiciously. Is this the purpose of your establishment of the police station? Let us help you collect blood. Bert's face sank, and he said coldly, You think too much. The surroundings suddenly became dignified. Blade pushed down his sunglasses, and with a look of disdain on his face, Bert laughed and said, It's just a matter of both public and private purposes. Mercury said again, Even if a police station is established, humans will not treat us as their own. Of course not. The bulb director is probably already studying how to kill me, Bert said, but it will reduce their hostility to us. We have huge capital, and a large number of Kazakhs, clan vampires, plus nuclear bombs. If it is not necessary, humans will not want to go to war with us. The reason why the vampire race has this crisis is mainly that you pure-blooded vampires are shouting to enslave human beings all day long. So S.H.I.E.L.D. came up with the plan and used traitor Deacon. Speaking of Deacon, Mercury's face was completely darkened. This was the biggest stain in her life. She worked for a human undercover agent, and she admired him immensely. In short, the vampire clan police station must be established, and those vampires who break the law, as well as radical vampires, like vampires who think they are superior to others, must be dealt with. Bert said without the slightest doubt. This is not for human beings, this is my request for the vampire race. I have never liked vampires that suck the blood of living people. Blade nodded approvingly. Bert didn't lie, he was still a human. Mercury snorted coldly. What's wrong with our race being superior? Aren't you awake yet? If humans spare no expense, the vampire clans will be wiped out within a month. Bert said disdainfully. The weakness of the vampires is too obvious. It is no longer the Middle Ages. Today's human beings use various methods to kill vampires. This time, Mercury was silent. It turned out that they had high self-esteem, but this time, the confrontation with S.H.I.E.L.D. made them understand that human beings have become stronger than them. In the battle with S.H.I.E.L.D., they did not have a single victory. To lose, to be slaughtered completely one-sided. If it wasn't for the blood god taking the S.H.I.E.L.D. stronghold, they wouldn't even have the qualifications to negotiate. Bert said, Mercury, times have changed. Mercury gritted her teeth and said, I will support you in establishing the vampire clan police station, but I hope you can remember that you are the blood god of the vampire clan. Of course, I am the blood god of the vampires. Bert laughed. At this time, Director Fury walked in through the side door with a dark face. He said to Wang Bert, I will send someone to discuss the previous matter. Bert Wang, do remember, I will always be watching you. After speaking, Director Fury left without looking back. The conversation with Ms. Carter just now was not smooth. Of course, it may also be his performance. Should I act scared? Bert shrugged, and he asked Carter who came out. President Carter, how many assets do I have now? Have you finished counting them? Only a rough estimate. You are now richer than the Stark family. If you want to make all the statistics, I need a professional team to cooperate with me. Carter smiled and said, Speaking of which, I didn't expect your vampire clans to be so rich, have invested in so many fields, and even have control over Universal Pictures, one of the 6 major Hollywood studios. Without our injection, Universal Pictures would have closed down long ago. Mercury said disdainfully, The vampire clan has investments in many fields, and even has its own financial company on Wall Street, a veritable vampire company. I didn't expect this. It seems that I can make movies by myself in the future. Bert touched his chin, turned his head, and said to Blade, Blade, let's shoot a series of Blade movies to promote the vampire clan. You will play the protagonist role. Carter and Mercury are both speechless. A movie with Blade as the protagonist can promote the vampire race? He is a vampire hunter. Blade said coldly. I'm not interested, I won't act. Bert laughed. You don't need to act, the sunglasses are a part of your body, and the sunglasses are enough. Blade directly gave Bert a middle finger. Bert didn't care and said, While everyone is together, let me talk about the next layout, mainly in terms of framework, the specific implementation. I want you to know. This marks the end of part 4 of the story. Blade God of Blood. Thank you for listening. Please like the video and hit the subscribe button to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.